Good morning, Port Telesur. I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin in Gaza. Israeli airstrikes killed 9 Palestinians and wounded 20 on Tuesday. The strikes also destroyed a residential building. According to Palestinian officials, 70 families lived in the 13-story building. The attacks are reportedly in retaliation for 130 rockets and mortars fired from Gaza on Monday. Hamas claimed responsibility for the firing of rockets at the Israeli city of Tel Aviv, which were shot down by Israel's Iron Dome defense system. A Palestinian official says that Cairo has proposed an indefinite ceasefire. Some reports in Israeli media indicate that a deal could be reached by the end of the day Tuesday. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko signed a decree dissolving parliament and calling for fresh elections to be held in October. Poroshenko says that many members of parliament are allies of the militant separatists, referring to the rebels in the east of the country who are fighting for greater autonomy from the right-wing central government. He calls it a move towards cleansing the Ukrainian parliament.
Я розглядаю перемогу на Донбасі і перемогу демократичних реформаторських сил.
Snap elections are part of my peace plan. Its key point is political dialogue with Donbass. Sorry, but who shall we talk to? We can talk to illegal armed groups in the language of force only until they lay down weapons.
З незаконними збройними формуваннями спілкуватися можна лише за допомогою сили, поки вони не складуть зброю.
Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko are due to meet in Belarus, capital city of Minsk, on Tuesday. The two are expected to discuss the security and political situation in eastern Ukraine and continue talks concerning the EU-Ukraine Association Agreement. Several high-ranking members of the EU are also expected to attend, including the EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton, Vice President Gunther Oettinger, and Commissioner for Trade Carol de Gucht. U.S. President Barack Obama authorized surveillance flights over Syria late Monday. He says the United States is preparing to extend its military action against the self-declared Islamic State into Syria. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey says that Central Command is preparing options to address ISIS both in Iraq and Syria with a variety of military tools. Those would include airstrikes. The United States has been carrying out airstrikes against Islamic State targets in northern Iraq for the past 2 weeks. According to the Pentagon, the strikes have slowed down the extremist group but have not substantially harmed its potential. The White House says that although it is considering military action in Syria, no concrete decision has been made. Social groups in Ferguson, Missouri are preparing a claim against the state for racial harassment against African Americans. Human rights activist Reverend Al Sharpton asked for a fair and impartial investigation into the case and demands an end to police brutality. The death of black teenager Michael Brown at the hands of a police officer in early August turned international attention on Ferguson as yet another example of racial tensions in the U.S. The death of Brown also generated protests in which the police made at least 60 arrests. State Police Chief Ron Johnson says he is certain peace will return to the community. That's despite plans for further protests. Mexican authorities announced Monday that a dozen satellite-monitored vehicles will be deployed ahead of the infamous La Bestia cargo trains near the southern border with Guatemala. Authorities also explained that government programs on the southern border will focus particularly on the 23 municipalities bordering Guatemala and Belize.
Primero, evitar que los migrantes pongan en riesgo su integridad.
Firstly, preventing the migrants from putting their integrity at risk using a train that are used for freight and not passengers. Secondly, developing specific strategies to secure the migrants' security and protection. And thirdly, fighting and eradicating the criminal groups that violate their rights.
Tercero, combatir y erradicar a los grupos criminales que vulneran sus derechos.
Colombian presidential elections last June were shaken by the revelation that the campaign team of challenger Oscar Iván Zuluaga employed a hacker to infiltrate the peace talks in Havana, Cuba. The scandal went deeper after hacker Andres Sepulveda revealed the nature of his job ordered by the campaign. Here's our Colombia correspondent, Charles Parkinson.
For Senator Ivan Cepeda, the revelation that he was targeted by a hacker as part of a plot to undermine the country's ongoing peace process is just the latest evidence of the illegal measures former President Alvaro Uribe is willing to go to in his quest for power.
It is very important to denounce this criminal apparatus, to show that its true bosses are Uribe, the Attorney General Ordóñez. If it is true what he, the hacker, says, and also Oscar Ivan Zulaga, the presidential candidate of Uribismo.
The scandal emerged after Sepulveda, who was employed by the campaign team of Uribe-backed presidential candidate Zuluaga, spoke to the press for the first time since his arrest in May. For Álvaro López Dorado, who served in the Supreme Court of Justice, Sepulveda's fall is just the latest example of Uribe's ring of criminality.
They have managed to isolate the preparatory acts. Nobody looks at them as a whole. Instead, they view them as individual crimes. In that manner, these rings of security fall and have to flee the country, but Uribe remains.
Currently, 3 former officials from Uribe's 2002 to 2010 presidency remain at large outside the country, avoiding charges for criminal acts committed during their time in office. This is the latest reflection of the willingness of Uribe and his allies to engage in criminal acts to achieve their political aims. But as has happened in past years, he appears to have effectively insulated himself and would likely remain unscathed. This is Charles Parkinson for Telesur in Bogotá, Colombia.
The Australian government will spend $60 million to prevent political extremism in the country. The government plans to strengthen Australian security agencies and create a law requiring people returning from conflict zones in Iraq and Syria to prove they traveled there for a legitimate purpose.
This is a movement, as we have seen on our TV screens and on the front pages of our newspapers, of utter ferocity, medieval barbarism, allied to modern technology. That's how serious and how dangerous this movement is, and because of the Australians who are involved with this movement, what might otherwise be a problem in a faraway country is a problem for us. It is a problem for us.
Anti-government Islamabad, Pakistan. Despite a Supreme Court order demanding they leave the area, they remain there. The protesters are still present on Constitution Avenue, calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The Supreme Court on Monday ordered both parties holding sit-ins on Constitution Avenue to clear the road. The Pakistani Interior Minister also directed the local city administration and law enforcement agencies to implement the orders. Despite that, no officers have yet forced the protesters to move. The sit-ins have closed public transport, business, and government offices and forced the closure of many roads blocked by items placed in the street by protesters. And ending on a lighter note, an Argentine and Uruguayan couple took the top prize at the World Tango Championship held in Buenos Aires during its final day on Monday. The couple outperformed another 40 couples, 28 from Argentina, 5 from Colombia, others from Russia, Japan, Singapore, China, South Korea, and Italy. According to the Ministry of Culture, 600,000 people attended the event. Uruguayan Lorena González Cataneo and Sebastián Acosta of Argentina danced their ways to become the World Tango Champions. The World Cup is one of the main activities within the International Tango Festival in Buenos Aires, which began on August 13th with nearly 2,000 participating artists. And Argentina will celebrate 100 years since the birth of their great author, master of the short story, Julio Cortázar. The National Library of the country will host a conference of activities. We leave you with a part of our Cortázar special. More on those stories that we've reported and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.
Rayuela is a story of an Argentine intellectual, Horacio Oliveira, who wanders aimlessly in Paris with his lover La Maga, but is forced to return to Buenos Aires, which tests him even further. This text marks the stream of consciousness style of Cortázar and his investigation between chaos and order in the way of Sartre or Derrida. where the reality of the everyday that is now perhaps too extreme.